Stephen and Dennis here in Domaine de Crémant, the home of Eldon Selections and BurgundyWine.com. And
guess what we're doing here tonight? If you said champagne, you'd be half right. We're going to look at small producer champagne, but we're also going to be looking at Crémant de Bourgogne. And we're going to talk a little bit about what makes them the same and what makes them different. Give you some idea of the production areas of both.
And some of you may know, some of you may not, that the similarities between Crémant de Bourgogne and Champagne are closer than the differences. Yeah, and so the method starts by making a base wine which needs to be low alcohol, which suits the climate. You know, in Burgundy they pick a little bit earlier, in Champagne slightly more northern, although the two regions are touching. So they make a lower alcohol base wine, and then...
And high acidity.
High acidity essential, yeah. And the second fermentation, they add sugar and yeast into the bottle.
That's what makes the bubbles.
In the bottle. That's why they have these thick set bottles. Allow that yeast to come to the neck of the bottle. The bottles are slightly angled, and then they disgorge.
When Stephen says disgorge, essentially what they do is they little by little get the sediment from the second fermentation down into that, so it's laying right against the top of the cork, and then they freeze the end of the bottle, and it's a very deft move, isn't it? They blow the cork out, which also blows out the sediment, and at the same time they'll top it up with whatever style of wine they want. It can be anything from extra dry where there's no dosage to sort of semi-sweet. Yeah, it's just very, very interesting the way, and that's why these heavy set bottles exist, because fermentation, both fermentations, but the second fermentation creates where yeast eats sugar and creates alcohol plus carbon dioxide. In the bottle, the carbon dioxide is trapped. And so the bubbles are a result of the second fermentation, not a result of... And the story goes it was a miracle, it was an accidental discovery.
Dom Perignon.
Yeah, but that's sort of apocryphal.
Yeah.
But as everybody knows, in Champagne they make millions and millions and millions of bottles. You go up there to visit to some of the big houses, and they put you in a little train, and they run you through these chalk caves that go on for miles and miles and miles. So it's in the interest of the big house producers, production houses, to have a house wine, a standard wine. So they want their wine to be the same year after year after year, as opposed to a vintage wine that's different every time every bottle you open up. Yeah. So to do that, they have to, I don't know. I mean, I think it's unfair to say lower their standards, but they have to have a fairly neutral base wine to start with, and what they do afterwards is gives you something. You've tasted them, you know. You go to you get the big house production wines, and they're yeasty. They have
creamy.
A little bit of lemon, but they never really taste like wine. They taste like what we think is champagne. You come down into the Champagne region, outside of the big city, outside of the big production towns, and there are 3,500 small production champagne producers, and they're making wine.
Yeah, so similar to Burgundy itself in some ways regarding the small producers.
Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing is, it's because Crémant de Bourgogne came to be because we're in essentially the same area as Champagne. We've always specialized in exclusively Burgundies, but we include Champagne because it's such a close neighbor. As a matter of fact, the southernmost part of the Champagne region, which is where this that comes from, touches onto the Crémant production area, and the only difference is a political line. It's a county border. A county border, essentially. Yeah. One side they can call it Champagne, the other side they have to call it Crémant.
Yeah. And because Burgundy and Champagne are also connected with grape varieties, it just brings that connection even closer, because not all sparkling wine is made in the traditional method, or the method champenoise. other sparkling wines from around the world are made differently, made in tanks and made in different various ways. So first of all, it's important to remember that these two, Crémant and Champagne, are connected that way. Then it's also important to remember that the regions in France that are allowed to make Crémant, they don't always make them with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. They never make them with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. They make them with the grapes local to their own region. So really, Crémant de Bourgogne and Champagne are the ones with the closest relationship.
Because they do use Chardonnay and Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
In Champagne, you have a third grape called Pinot Meunier, which is a sort of a would make red wine if you were to make it, as a still wine.
And sometimes we have aligote in Crémant.
In Crémant, sometimes you'll get aligote, So there are slight differences. If you try, in our experience, if you try and make a Crémant like a Champagne, it doesn't work. You're not looking for the Champagne is looking for finesse in the Chardonnay. Crémant leans more on the fruitiness of the Pinot Noir. There are Champagnes that are 100% Pinot Noir too. The classic blend is like a third of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier.
But these two, regardless, Champagne, Crémant, great value, amazing value on the side. They really are.
The small production Champagnes are very good value, and there's a huge movement afoot that is people are discovering these small producers more and more. Yeah, and so are we. So you'll be seeing more. You'll be seeing more of these small producers.
Yeah, it's actually an exciting kind of growing area, and one of the reasons is because people are realizing how good they are with food, and they're becoming not just an aperitif drink, but they're actually becoming part of the meal and the menu. Yeah, and
even in situations where they're not telling you what the vintage is, they are often from a particular vintage. So you'll get a lot of that the variation of the style of the wine follows the style of the vintage.
Yeah,
as opposed to house style. That's in France. In France, Café Society, they used to call Champagne used to be sort of in the vernacular called roteuse, and roteuse means to burp.
It's fine. Yeah. We're amongst friends.
Anyway, so this, as usual, this tasting is designed around a menu.
Yeah, Eddie again. Managed to get some amazing scallops. We're just into the shellfish season, and these fantastic scallops in the shell. So we, like with every great ingredient, we just kept them as simple as possible, deshelled them. They were pan fried, and side by side, we just blanched off some sprout leaves, just again coming into season, and done it with a ginger beurre blanc with nori, kind of seaweed crumb, and some soy.
It was really good.
So it's just a classic, simple combination.
And scallops lend themselves very much to this, to putting a bottle of sparkling wine on the table as opposed to an aperitif. Yeah. Think of these as food wines now. They can be celebratory wines where you have a toast beforehand or afterwards. Yeah. But I mean, think about putting them on the table with that's haggis in the back. Think about putting them on the table with a meal. So anyway, cheers.
Please keep in touch with us on burgundywine.com, our YouTube channel, and our Facebook social media, Eldon Selections.
And www.burgundywine.com.